You're about to hear one of the most insane business stories of the last decade. It's a story about massive ambition, a fraud so big it imploded the company, and then a comeback that almost nobody thought was possible. This is the story of Luckin Coffee.
So, let's just get right to it. The big question that hangs over this whole thing. I mean, how does a coffee company fake over $300 million in sales, get publicly disgraced, kicked off a major stock exchange, and then turn around and become bigger than Starbucks in its home country? It just doesn't make sense. That's the puzzle we're going to solve.
Luckin Coffee, Chinese company listed on the NASDAQ, I should say. They just received a delisting notice, right, Susan?
Successful IPO just about a year ago. So Luckin Coffee is that Chinese company that was supposed to be a Starbucks killer. It turned out the COO fabricated around $300 million worth of sales last year. And you've seen a multitude of executives stepping down as well.
And you know, this whole thing didn't start in some stuffy boardroom. The fuse was lit by this, an 89-page anonymous report. And get this, it was backed by 11,000 hours of secret video footage of their stores. It's straight out of a spy movie, but this was the real deal that blew the lid off the entire operation. Okay, so let's start with the scandal itself. This is part one, the billion-dollar coffee fraud. We're going to look at how that explosive report took this company that was flying high and just brought it crashing down to earth. And what's just crazy is how fast this all happened. In May 2019, they're the talk of Wall Street, a huge IPO. By January 2020, that bombshell report drops. And then just 5 months later, poof, they're delisted from the NASDAQ. It was an absolute nosedive, from hero to zero. So here's the Zai in black and white. Luckin was telling investors, yeah, our stores are killing it, selling 400 to 500 cups a day. But those secret investigators, they literally sat there and counted. The real number was more like 200 to 300. We're talking about inflating sales by up to 88% in some cases, just making it up. And here it is, the big number. When all was said and done, Luckin's own investigation admitted this was the amount of revenue they just invented. Over $300 million in fake sales in just 9 months. It's a number that's almost hard to wrap your head around. So you have to ask yourself, how does a company get here? What kind of pressure cooker environment leads to a fraud on this scale? Well, to get that, we have to rewind and look at the strategy that started it all, a philosophy of growth at all costs. This was their playbook right from the very beginning. And it was a strategy the COO had actually used before in the rental car business of all things. The plan was simple, and it was brutal. Burn through cash by selling super cheap coffee, swallow up the market, go public to get even more cash, and then, only then, worry about actually making money. And their number one weapon in this fight was price. It was a full-on price war. In China, you'd pay 30 to 40 RMB for a Starbucks. Luckin comes in at half that. They weren't just trying to compete. They were trying to completely change what people thought coffee should cost. Now, to be fair, their model was actually pretty brilliant. Everything was done through a mobile app. Their stores weren't big, expensive cafes. They were tiny, cheap pickup counters. They used data to figure out the best spots to open, and they hooked people with an endless stream of deals. They were basically a tech company that happened to sell coffee. But that whole growth at all costs model creates this insane pressure to show results. And when the real results weren't good enough, well, they just started making them up. And that brings us back to the scandal, to the moment that whole house of cards came tumbling down. And you have to understand, this wasn't just about faking sales. To make a fake sale look real, you also need fake costs to go with it. So they invented over $300 million in revenue, but they also had to invent $173 million in expenses to make it all look legit. The entire financial statement was a work of fiction. And the fallout? Oh, it was brutal, and it was fast. The stock price went to basically zero overnight. They got kicked off the NASDAQ. Regulators in both the US and China hit them with huge fines. Executives went to jail. The company had no choice but to completely clean house. For pretty much any other company on Earth, this would have been game over. But, and this is the really unbelievable part of the story, that wasn't the end. Not even close. Against all odds, Luckin somehow managed to pull off one of the most incredible corporate turnarounds you will ever see. So the question is, how on earth did they do it? The new leadership came in with a crystal clear plan. First, they got a $240 million cash injection to keep the lights on. Then, they completely flipped the company's philosophy. It was no longer about reckless growth. It was about running a smart, profitable business. And the real game changer? They figured out that creating cool new drinks could drive sales way better than just giving stuff away for free. And the numbers, they just speak for themselves. I mean, look at this. This isn't a company in hiding. This is explosive growth, all happening after the scandal. They go from 16,000 stores to over 29,000 in just a couple of years. This isn't survival, it's total domination on a real working business model. And then came this. The moment that just solidifies this insane comeback. The company that was left for dead, the poster child for corporate fraud, officially became bigger than Starbucks in China. Let that sink in. It is an absolutely mind-blowing achievement. But if you think they were satisfied with just conquering China, think again. After reclaiming the throne at home, Luckin is now looking outward. The next chapter in this crazy story is about taking their brand global. And talk about a power move. In July of 2025, they planted their flag right in the backyard of their biggest rival, Starbucks. Opening in Manhattan, the heart of the American financial world, where their reputation was absolutely destroyed, is a massive, audacious statement. And they're doing it with a smart plan. This isn't the old, reckless Luckin, it's a careful rollout. They're starting in New York, proving the concept works, and then expanding step by step to other major cities. This is calculated and disciplined. All right, so after all of that, what are the big lessons here? Well, first, a total catastrophe doesn't always have to be the end of the line. Second, a smart, tech-focused model really can shake up even the biggest players. Third, never underestimate the power of home field advantage. Chinese consumers really stuck by them. But finally, no matter how great the comeback story is, the past never completely disappears. Which leaves us with this one massive question for the future. In China, Luckin pulled off a miraculous redemption. But as they expand into places like the US, where they're still remembered for the scandal, can they ever truly rewrite that story? Can they escape their past? That is the billion-dollar question that will define their next chapter.